why on earth are we spending a whole day on how to write music? Why do you take 4 semesters of music theory and an introduction to composition and arranging, and some of you take more advanced composition and arranging, and you've got faculty who have gone on for further study and master's degrees in this? Why so much work in how to write music? I mean, aren't there more important things to do? I mean, don't we've got, people that we need to reach. We've got Bible studies we need to do. There's so many other things to do. What does music do? What does music bring? There's a lot of things we could say about that. But perhaps the best thing I could say is that music makes truth real. Christian music should recognize the realities of life in a fallen world, but it should also recognize the reality of the God who is ultimately in control. Now, we can say those things in words, right? We can write out these statements. We have the Bible that says these kinds of things. And yet God, in his own wisdom and in his view of life and existence, especially for us as Christians, has ordained, he has commanded that we sing and play instruments. He's commanded that we communicate our gratitude and praise to him through music, not only speaking it, not only writing it, but singing and playing it. And he's commanded us to use music to build each other up, to teach and admonish each other. We're supposed to speak to each other in psalms and hymns and spiritual songs. Now, I'm not telling you something you don't already know. I know that you hear this all the time, but God has told us to use music to do this. And what I find as I look in the scriptures and as I look at experience and my own years of making music and being a part of music ministry in the local church, is that music brings to the words a reality, an emotional reality, an experiential reality. In other words, not only do we have the truth statements, the Bible truth in the lyrics that we're setting to music, but music drives those into us in a way that helps us feel them, so that we are getting both the knowledge, the understanding, but also a knowledge through experiencing. I'm going to talk about this from 2 Psalms today in our time. In a few minutes, we'll be looking at Psalm 27 very briefly and Psalm 30. But recently, over the past month, in my YouTube feed and Facebook or Instagram, a fairly new song by a contemporary Christian musician has come up a number of times. The musician, her name is Alison Ide, and the song is entitled IDK, or I don't know, as in the text speak. One person commenting on the video of this song when it was released about a month or so ago said, "This song sounds like a panic attack." And it's kind of true. Let me just read some of the words to you, and I'll explain where I'm going with this, all right? "I went to the gym and then therapy to push down the panic, and did it help? I don't know. Because I wake up like I never slept at all. Now I'm at the function. Jerry keeps asking, 'What's your 5-year plan?' Sorry, what? I don't know. But I know the one who knows it all. And he's walking beside me, taking all of the timing and perfecting every part of it. I'm in the mirror like, 'Listen, stop. Why are you freaking out? Don't you know he only wins? Check the stats again. He won't let you down. There's no room for debate. Yeah, even demons know their fate. So tell me, what are you scared of? I don't know.'" And the song goes on like that for a while. When this came across my feed, I listened to it, did a little bit of research on it, because I kind of got the sense from the feed and from the videos and very smart promotion of the song before it was released. She and her team were doing a lot of things to promote it on different forms of social media and whatnot, so it was pretty clear to me that this was probably going to become a hit. I don't know if any of you have already heard or seen anything about this song. If you haven't, that's okay. I'm not promoting the song, please understand. But a couple things struck me about it. One, the words are, in a sense, very real. And I could understand how, especially a young person, maybe especially a young lady, might wrestle with some of the questions that are raised in the song. The comments on YouTube by various people listening were like, "Oh, you're singing my life," and yeah, I know this, and the song goes on and asks more questions like that, and it does sound like a panic attack in music as the words build up and the questions build up and whatnot. And the song speaks very directly to some real needs, and it has some truth in it, certainly. But there are a couple problems with it. One has to do with the poetry and the minimal amount of Bible truth that we end up getting out of it. That's an issue. And the other issue has to do with the music itself. The performer, the songwriter, even in the midst of talking about these kind of serious things with very kind of somewhat slangy kind of text, can't help but start to kind of groove and move and dance with her own music when she's talking about doubt and questioning and fear and whatnot. In other words, there's things about the music that aren't really in line with the truth that she's trying to communicate through the song. And it led me to think a little bit more about what we need in our Christian music. What does your church need when you're thinking about songs you're going to write? What do your fellow believers need? Well, what they need is truth that is meant to change us. First of all, truth in the lyrics. That means they need to be doctrinally true. They also need to be real to life. They need to be true to our lived experience. But they also need to have, I'm going to say it this way, a linguistic truth. That's kind of a weird way of saying it. In other words, the words need to speak in a language that communicates the reality and the depth in a way that is going to ultimately help us become more like Christ. So we need truth in the lyrics. We need truth in music. The music needs to speak in an emotionally honest way. And we can do this especially when we're writing music, say, for a choir or a solo or an instrumental arrangement of something. Congregational music is a little bit challenging because each verse, the words are changing, and we might go from a verse that is speaking about challenges and maybe sorrow, and then the next verse is speaking very joyously and victoriously, and we can't really change the music from verse to verse normally in a congregational song. But in the music we're writing for choirs and for ensembles and whatnot, we've got the freedom and the flexibility to let that music speak to the emotional truth of the lyrics. There needs to be truth in the music emotionally, intellectually as well. In other words, there needs to be a craftsmanship and a quality in what you do with the music, but there should be a spiritual truth too. And what I mean by that is the music must in some way push our attention towards the truths of the words. And again, this is where our contemporary Christian churches get into a lot of trouble, because the music that they use, much of it or most of it, was not created to encourage attention to the lyrics so much. Not that they ignore them completely, but that style of music is much more about feeling the power of the moment rather than really listening to and wrestling with the truths of the words. So we need truths in lyrics, we need truth in the music, and we need to make sure in both the lyrics and the music that the truth really is about truth about life and truth about God. In other words, we can't be afraid to talk about hard things in our songs. And we can't be afraid to portray those hard things in our music. This is going to make a little more sense when we go to Psalm 30 in just a moment. So I'm just kind of giving this to you all up front here. But our churches need the whole truth of the Christian experience and God's revelation to us in our words of our songs, in the lyrics, as well as life. So truth about life, truth about God. So remember what the question I'm answering here is, what do our churches need in the music we're writing? Truth in the lyrics, truth in music, and in both of those areas it needs to be true to life and truth about God. And the fourth thing I'll say here in answering this question is, this is going to sound a little bit like I'm repeating myself, and that's okay. I'm getting older, so I have the privilege of repeating myself, okay? Truth in approach. Don't laugh so hard about that. Truth in approach. In other words, the music needs to involve our whole being, body, mind, soul, spirit, will, however many parts of you there are. The music ought to engage all of it. It ought to reach out to all of it. It should speak to all of your being. And it should do it in a way that is encouraging us to change in the right direction. Music has the power to influence, not control, but influence us and influence how we think. That's why music is such an important thing and why it's so powerful and why human beings have been making it for thousands of years. Now, how do we do that? How do we give that to our churches? Well, you're spending the day working on that. We need the technical side. We need the skills. We need the knowledge, creativity to adequately and powerfully carry lyrical truth. The truth of the words needs your musical skill. It needs every bit of it. You need to throw yourself fully into understanding harmony, rhythm, melodic structure, form, etc. You need to know that stuff well, and you need to be continually growing and becoming more knowledgeable, more skillful, more creative in that side of it. Because we need that to carry these truths.